Hi everyone. So this is a little bit of a follow-up video to the unboxing video I made a little while ago on the Primalucelab Eagle 3 Pro. And so I've been running around with that for a few weeks now. Had it out under many nights because we had a lot of good nights, especially throughout the latter part of July, first part of August. And I really got to run it through its paces. And while in general, I think it's a pretty capable computer and kind of hardware combo, and it's a really neat design, I could not get over some problems that I was having with the system, and I eventually ended up sending it back for a return. And so I wanted to go over the problem that I had, which I don't think is going to be typical for everybody. I think honestly, I just got a defective unit. But also why that kind of led me to look into other things and other things that I'm thinking about now. So, to begin with, the problem that I had with the Eagle was that it was restarting itself. It was basically crashing and rebooting a couple of times a night. So, I was getting really good images out of it, and it appeared to be running everything that I had just fine, and then it would just restart. And this was really, really frustrating. I went back and forth with the Primalucelab support folks, who I'm assuming are over in Italy, and they were great. They were very helpful, but unfortunately, taking this even all the way back to a backup I had made of the system on day one and leaving it just powered up but with no other devices plugged in, it would still restart a couple times a day with a couple of different power sources swapped out just to see which would have an effect. So I think it's probably something with the power supply or internal hardware that I wasn't able to track down. So I ended up returning it. And the idea at the time was, oh, I guess I'll exchange it and get a new one. And obviously, with any return on a lot of this kind of gear, you end up sending back, kind of waiting for them to get it, process it, and return it back to you. So while I was waiting on that, I started thinking through, well, what are other options that are out there? I'd heard a couple of different ideas from folks in my astronomy club when I was showing them the Eagle, and things like that. And I just kind of wanted to compare. I figured, I'm in a waiting game anyways. I'll do some experimentation. And what I ended up testing out was using an Intel Nuc. So for those that aren't aware, Intel kind of made this small computer form factor as almost a reference design for mini PCs a few years ago, and it is a full, kind of Windows PC, but in just a very small form factor. And as a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure that this kind of board and chipset and all that is the starting point of the Eagle. But the benefit of this over something like the Eagle is that it's much cheaper, right? So this just to put it, full transparency on that, the Eagle Pro was right about $2,000 for the computer itself. And then, this guy, which is the Core i5 processor version of the Intel Nuc, was a little under, I think it was about $400 for it and some RAM to go with it. They also don't tip, you can get kits with them that come with a hard drive. This one, I got the one that didn't have a hard drive because I already had a spare, relatively small solid state drive lying around, but that's more than enough to run the equipment that I have. So, looking at this, I've got two USB ports in the front here. I believe I've got one Thunderbolt port in the back, but two more USB 3.0 ports. It can do Ethernet, HDMI, and power. So fairly bare bones in terms of total number of ports, but enough. It's got enough of them, especially enough for running the USB 3 gear I have. As a matter of fact, when I was running with this last night, I didn't even have a USB hub plugged in other than one that I have on the camera. I was able to kind of get all of my gear plugged into here pretty easily, but I am going to go for a hub solution as well. But the thing that I was a little nervous about with this was whether or not I could make it as user-friendly for me at the end of the day than what the Eagle was. And I think in my previous video I showed, you power it up, it'll take about a minute, and when it beeps, you can just do a remote desktop from your iPad straight into the computer there. So I was going, well, am I going to be able to get this set up to work in the same way? And the quick answer is yeah, I was able to do that without a problem. It doesn't give me the beep, but other than that, which I'm sure I could probably code in if there is a system beep speaker in here, I don't know if there is, then I get that. It starts up just fine. I can remote desktop straight into it, so I have no need to have a monitor hooked in at any point in the process after I did the initial setup. After that, there was also one other thing that the Eagle did that I liked, is it would run off of your home Wi-Fi, or it could run as its own Wi-Fi access point. So if you're out in the field, you can just bring your telescope with the Eagle as part of it and your iPad or iPhone or something like that, and connect straight to it and do a remote desktop from there. So I wanted to see if this could do the same thing. And there's some things you can do, I guess, in the command line under Windows 10 to kind of make that work. But looking on cloudy nights, I just saw that there's an application out there called Connectify, which you can find at connectify.me. And what it does is it's a little kind of on-off application on your laptop, or in this case on the Nook, that will allow it to be that same kind of Wi-Fi access point. It'll also let you do things like share your internet connection if you have one. But for me, I was just thinking about creating a quick point-to-point when I'm out in the field. That app, I believe there was a sale going on, probably still is, probably a sale you hit whenever you hit the site, had a lifetime subscription to it, a lifetime purchase of it for all the updates for $15. And there's a free version that you can mess around with as well. So I was like, okay, if it works, it works. It did. So I paid the $15 for it. So this, all in, even if you were buying a hard drive, is probably about $500 plus $15 for the Connectify. Gives me all of the PC computing and connectivity that I had in the other device that was $2,000. So that's $1,500 cheaper. Another thing is this is a little bit lighter than the Eagle was, because it's small. It's 4 inches by 4 inches square, and that's probably 1.5 to 2 inches tall. This in and of itself, it comes with a little mounting plate that you can put here if you're going to hang it on a wall or something. It's not really built with the astrophotographer in mind specifically. But one of the things that I was testing out is this thing's pretty light. It's only about a little over a pound, I think. Is I just put Velcro on the back of it. This is kind of that heavy-duty Velcro that can hold up to like 10 pounds or something. I already had some Velcro on my pier and literally just stuck it there. And man, it doesn't move at all. It sticks just fine, and it was working fine. That's probably a temporary solution because it still has me running a lot of cables off of the top of this. I want to find a solution for putting it on top. So, this works pretty good. It did kind of what the other one did. It doesn't have all the power management built into it that the Eagle had, nor the software that controls all that power management and like the do control and stuff like that. So if I want to use this, and I'm saving myself $1,500 by doing it. And by the way, Core i5 here is the same Core i5 processor that's in the Eagle Pro. So it's the same processing power. And I'll let you know, this thing runs every piece of software I have pretty zippy. So the Core i3 version of this, which is even about $100 cheaper even, I think, would probably work just fine for most software that people are typically using. So no power control, but all my connectivity and processing that I need. So how do I solve power control? Well, this is my interim solution for the moment, which is something I already had, which is the Pegasus Astro Pocket Power Box. So this does a lot of the same things that the Eagle was doing. As a matter of fact, I've gone over this particular device a little bit in the past, but just to kind of show here what we're looking at is we have different power connections that you've got in here for a single power in coming in on this. Now the difference here is these are all your standard, 2.1 millimeter DC power connections versus the proprietary cable on the Eagle. So this comes with 4 small, I think 1 meter long, 12 volt cables, which is pretty much what you need because you've got 4 ports on it. Versus the Eagle, where you're buying them separately, they're proprietary and they cost a little bit more money. And they're not threaded in on this, but I can run my power off of this. I've been reading that this should have enough, be able to push enough watts and amps to actually power the Nuc as well. This uses a 2.5 millimeter jack and instead of the 2.1 millimeter on this, but little $1 adapter or whatnot would let you kind of connect those together. So I'm gonna give that a try out here in a little bit to see how that works. But beyond that, on the other side of this, it also has the dew heater control or plug-in for power, and then the box itself has software in it that does that same automatic dew control. And then it has a USB connection to run it into the Nuc here, and then I can use the software that's in this, same as I was using the software that was on the Primalucelab Eagle. Now, this also, it kind of has just about everything, but it lacks a few of the things that that I think I liked in the Eagle. One is, I'm probably still a little shy on ports for this, right? At the same point in time, I don't have really great mounting put together. I mean, I can Velcro this in, and they'll stay pretty stable, but I don't have a good way right now to have this sitting nicely on top of my scope without doing a lot of weird zip tying that I'm a little worried might make it a little bit more wobbly, that kind of thing. But the same folks that make the pocket power box make a non-pocket one, their ultimate power box, and on that one it's similar kind of design, except it also includes a built-in, what they're calling industrial grade USB 3 hub. So with that should give me everything that I would want to do. It still does the dew control. It also has a focus motor controller built in on the ultimate power box. More power ports should I need them, and kind of all of those other missing pieces. Plus, their software is a little bit more robust, a little bit more built for astronomy. There, if you're hearing any noise, I have my cat wanting to get into the video. So it's a little bit more robust, made for getting closer to those actual dedicated kind of observatory conditions, where it'll actually even restart the whole box if it notices that it locks up, which I have noticed being an issue on this from time to time in the year that I've had it here. So, I'm thinking I'm going to go ahead and give that a try, and that runs about $500. So it also isn't cheap. But once I start adding these up, about 515, I think we said, in order to cover, processor, computing, all that kind of stuff. Windows, by the way, you do need to put on this as well. Right now, I'm just using the non-active version of Windows 10 Pro, since that gives you the remote desktop. And that's a free way that you can kind of get in and mess with it, although you won't be getting updates as much. Or I may decide to spring $100 for it, or wait until it goes on sale, that kind of thing. So it's about $500 for this, about $500 for the beefed up pocket power box, and now I'm looking at $1,000 for everything that I was basically paying $2,000 for on the Eagle. Additionally, that pocket power box, you can buy the guys there have been smart enough to kind of know that people are probably going to use this type of configuration. So you can buy a mounting bracket for the pocket power box that also has a mounting bracket for the Nuc. Now, they end up being more the same size when you're looking at the ultimate power box. And when you put them together, you now have a single hard point that can be essentially bolted onto your dovetail bar, just like you could with the Eagle. And at that point, you're doing the same kind of thing. One set of power coming into the power box, and the USB connected in on that. So same number of cables going back and forth. The difference is that you got to do more manual setup, right? You've got to piece these things together. You've got to find the brackets and things if you want to put it together, or zip tie them yourself. You got to get all of the little pieces of software kind of configured together and working right a little bit more than you would have to on the Eagle. And the Eagle is designed to connect in on those dovetail bars and things if you're using their dovetail bar system. And so, all of that really comes down to, at the end of the day, personal preference. I kind of knew that I could do this build out before I went for the Eagle, but I thought, why not? I like their other products. Let me give it a try. Let me see if I feel like the value is worth it there. And it took good images. At the same point in time, it didn't take any images that were better than what I was taking off of this. They were a little bit better than what I was running off of my old laptop because I was able to manage my weight a little bit better. And I think I'm going to be able to do the same thing here to help my guiding out a little bit. But, the question that you have to answer for yourself when you're looking at these, when you're looking at a DIY solution and then good, better, best, is it worth it to pay that premium to get something that is going to take care of all of it for you? And initially, I was kind of into that. But if you are going to pay that premium, if I'm going to pay twice the price of what I'm going to pay for here, what I would expect to get out of it is that from kind of moment one, everything just works, right? There shouldn't really be much that I have to do after that. And with the Eagle, that really wasn't quite the case. It had a lot of things combined into a single chassis, which was nice. But it still had a decent amount of setup instructions, but it wasn't too bad to get through it. But then once you've done it, you still have to install all your software just like a normal computer. You got to configure everything up. It isn't really running the show for you. What it's doing is running the power, which these things do almost without configuration, right? And then it was putting it all into a single form factor. So if you're willing to put a little bit of DIY time into the how am I going to connect all this onto the physical scope, the setup for this really isn't that much longer. After having to install Windows on this and just doing a Windows install off of a USB drive, really the full setup to get this ready to go for an evening worth of imaging was about 3 hours. And most of that 3 hours was setting up the same astronomy software I had to set up on the Eagle. So post Windows install, getting the remote desktop together, deciding how I wanted to deal with the Wi-Fi, all that kind of stuff, really only about an hour worth of setup to get this ready to go. So, those are the kinds of things that you've got to weigh. I would call this, a better step with, if assuming there weren't any issues with the Eagle, I would call that the best. Just because it does put it all into one form factor, but it isn't like just buying something that's just going to flip the switch and be on and it's working fine. You still have to configure it almost as much as you have to do with something like this. And then stepping down from this, obviously there's other options. You can use a Windows Stick PC. Those get even cheaper. You're looking at $100 to $200 for some of those. I'm not brave enough to do that with the full software that I run on this. You can also step down from that to something like one of the Raspberry Pi devices. So like the ASI Air from ZWO is one of those kinds of devices, or you can get the StellarMate, where you can actually just get the software from StellarMate and use your own Raspberry Pi device and use that to control your computer. But at that point, you're not dealing with Windows, you're not dealing with ASCOM, and I found that to be a little bit more configuration than I feel comfortable getting into at this point. But those are the things that you look at, and then obviously get down to the point where you're just using your laptop, which brings me back to starting this whole thing. at the beginning. So that's, I wish I had a better review of the Eagle for you, but it's my honest review. I liked the device when it was working. I did enjoy it. If it didn't have those power issues, I probably wouldn't have returned it, and I probably wouldn't have looked at doing something like this instead. So my wallet thanks me for that, but it is kind of a note for anybody who's making these pieces of equipment. We may be tinkerers, kind of by nature in the hobby, but a lot of people, especially in this hobby, are retired and living off of more fixed incomes. So if you're going to build a premium product, it needs to be pretty close to a flawless premium product. Otherwise, we tinkerers are going to go find a way to tinker with it with something that's a lot cheaper. So that's it for this time. I hope this is helpful for you guys. I noticed a lot of comments on the unboxing video on people that were thinking about it. I don't want this to turn you off of the Eagle, but I would say that you probably don't need the highest end one. I think some of the lower end ones in terms of processor speed would work just fine. And at the same point in time, you might want to consider this kind of setup, and see if that might be something that would save you a little bit more money, but give you the same kind of result at the end of the day. So that's it for now, and until next time, I wish everybody clear skies. Thanks.